Hi, it's Bijan here from coachingonline.org. In this video, I was able and I had the honor to interview Laura. She's a real expert when it's about addictions. So she's an addiction coach, former addiction counselor. She has over thousands of hours of experience working with addictive clients. And she has also a lifetime of experiences dealing with addictions on her own. So I was so glad that she's shared openly her life story with us in this interview. So I'm sure you will get real value out of this. And she additionally shares which pattern she sees in people with addictions over and over again. And she shares her most powerful interventions and techniques to help these clients. And also to help their relatives and partners. So I'm pretty sure you will get a ton of value out of this. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel. Would be really happy. And yeah, enjoy the interview.
Yeah, hi Laura. I'm very glad to have you here today. I give our listeners a short introduction about you. So
Thank you.
I looked at your website and yeah, was really impressed to see your resume. You have a master in addiction disorder with almost a perfect GPA, complementary studies at Columbia University and Hazelden on mental health and addiction. You have hundreds of hours of continuing education and even thousands of hours of practice, whether as an addiction counselor or an addiction coach. So this was all very impressive to read. And
Yes.
but most impressive was honestly to see how brave you speak about your own addiction history. So I saw as well on your website that you are in recovery from heroin since 1980, alcohol since 1999, and you also have experience with compulsive overeating and others. So as I told you before in our short pre-talk, I have an addictive personality on my own as well. So I know how these impulses, how strong they can be. And
Mhm.
I really, yeah, I really admire how brave you are to speak that open about your past as well. Yeah, would you like to share a little bit about your personal story with our listeners?
Of course, and with pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. It's an honor because I love the way you coach people, and so um, I carry the message I have received, and I use the knowledge I have acquired. And for me, coming from a very glamorous world of journalism, war reporting, correspondent of the White House, it's just night and day. And if you had told me 25 years ago, oh, you're going to be an addiction counselor, and or pretty much, I'm an addictions coach certified, I would have looked at you and said, you're kidding me. But I had to put my sobriety, my recovery first, and I've never been that happy because I was drunk and high all the time. So happy face, but terrible feelings of misery, self-pity. So if you want a brief history of my little life and my progression in addiction, I'm open.
Yeah, would be super happy to,
Okay.
if you want, just what you feel comfortable to share. So,
Well, I'm very comfortable to share because I use self-disclosure. Because the clients can identify much better with someone who has been through hell and back, and who understand the same language. For example, we can tell each other jokes of sordid anecdotes, grim stories when we were drunk, high. And the normie, we call them the normies, the non-alcoholic addicts, they will be terrified, and we will laugh but forever. Anyway, so I was born in France, grandfather, father alcoholic, abusive. But I loved my dad. He committed a suicide at the end. And because he was an alcoholic and he was not treated, and also he had co-occurring disorders, which I treat too. I try to help with. So my first real addiction with food, I remember that when I was preparing food with my grandmother in her kitchen, I couldn't stop grazing, and the smell were all triggers for me. And I was a chubby baby because born 15, 20 years after the war in Europe, big was beautiful. So my mother is an addiction, a food addict. And then I realized that I was very chubby when I was treated poorly at school. I was called little balloon, so I realized that my body was not like the others and I should be ashamed of it. That was the message. I put myself on a diet at age 12, and I started drinking a lot. Actually, the first time I drank was when I was maybe 6, 4, or maybe 7. I was finishing the drinks after the Sunday parties, the Sunday dinner at home, when my grandmother and my mother were in the kitchen, and I was finishing the drinks, and I was feeling, it's so good, it's so good. And actually, it drove me to another place. So at age 11, I went outside. My parents were not home. Nobody was home. I bought a bottle of red wine, and I set myself in front of a mirror, wanting to experience what changes would alcohol make on myself, on my reactions. And I saw it. But the first drink, the first thing I swallowed was like a burning bush. I had the impression that I was belonging, that I was powerful, that I had no more depression, that the world was mine. But I couldn't stop. At age 11, I couldn't stop. I had to finish the bottle because I said to myself, you have to stop, you have to stop. And no, I got sick, but I drank again. So heroin came into my life with a boyfriend who was an heroin addict. And the detox was very hard, but I didn't realize that I was in detox because at the time, I was using opium too, and I was in Indonesia. I broke with my boyfriend in Indonesia, so I was by myself, and I felt horrible. Detox from heroin is terrible because you cannot die from a detox from withdrawal from heroin. You can from alcohol and benzodiazepines, but in heroin you want to die and you can't. So finally, I was smoking. I was using a lot of other things, and the detox was very hard, but it went by itself because I didn't realize I was in detox. And I came back to France, and I decided that I wanted violence in my life because my family was very dysfunctional, very violent, and that was the only thing I thought I knew was to deal with the chaos, and I was pretty good at it. So I went to a military recruiter and I said, I want to be a soldier. And he said, that's wonderful. You want to join the army? And say, yeah, okay, or you can be a nurse or a secretary. I said, no. I want to go to combat. I want to be in the field and I want to kill. And he looked at me in the eye and he said, okay, that won't happen. Mm-hmm. And he thought I was crazy. And at the time, it was in the 70s, 80s. But I became a war reporter and I went there. Wow. So, and I was more and more I was using that the journalists, and especially the war reporters, and especially at the time, they spend their time to drink because they see horrible things. So my PTSD got worsened, and my career was down the tube. I had a very brilliant career, and at one point I said, I cannot. I was calling sick every day, and I was lying, and I was on air, and I couldn't, I was mumbling. So I knew I had a problem with alcohol. I never denied that. But I had to ask for help. And at the time, it was just psychiatrists who didn't know a crap about addiction. So I went to a psych ward, but that was not where I was belonging until I got to a treatment center in the United States.
Wow. That's so impressive. Especially with what you told, and that you, so I don't want to go into it, but imagining that you have been to war, it's must be really crazy.
We know I was adrenaline addict. It's horrible to say, but now I can accept it. I wanted more blood, more violence, because it was my drug of choice. So what decided me to stop was I couldn't, but my own willpower. Every night, I was passing out. I was drinking alone, hiding, lying, crying, and imagining I was somewhere else, someone else. And it was a totally freaky life. And I asked for help, but I was brought to psych wards. But I was lucky enough to pray a God I didn't know every night. I was on my knees. Every morning I was on my knees, promising any God of my understanding or I could feel, please help me, please help me. And I was promising him or her every night, tomorrow I don't drink, tomorrow I don't drink. The first time, the first thing you do in the morning when you're an alcoholic and you're not in recovery, you want to drink. So I totally promised, broke every promise I made to God. But finally, I said to the God of my understanding of natural force, the universal energy, said, but you have to help me. You're the only thing that can help me. And it did, because I met a person who was in recovery for 10 years already, and literally brought me physically from Chechnya, where I was reporting, to America for a detox and a treatment center. And there I understood I had a disease. The relief of not being a bad person, it was not related to have willpower or a good character. It was just because I was different, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And essentially and especially it's a brain disease, you know? We don't have the switch button. When we start drinking, after a while, some people, they drink half a glass of wine or maybe two. They have the switch button. I don't. I cannot stop. It's just my genetics. And it's not my fault. So I surrendered. Can
I ask you one thing?
Sure.
So was this the moment where it finally made click, where you got like a grip on your addiction, when you met this person and this brought you to the...
Because he told me about his recovery, about the hell he has been going through. He was on cocaine and alcohol all day long. He was the boss of a very, very famous nightclub in Paris, where I didn't know him, but I was spending my time there years ago. And he literally one day, he was telling me a story. I couldn't identify with him, and he didn't talk to me about Alcoholics Anonymous or anything. So when you're ready, do like me, you go to that treatment center in America.
Yeah, amazing.
And it literally brought me, and then I had the click. First, I had reached the bottom. I was ready to do practically anything to get sober, to have my life back, because I was contemplating suicide. I couldn't live with alcohol. I couldn't live without it. Same with drugs. I had to bury my feelings. And then something very, very, very difficult I did was to ask for help. And this is key. It's the trigger to recovery. When we're able to ask for help, we are halfway through. So that's my experience, and accepting help and having a network. And so I studied addiction counseling once I was, well, it was not, you know, when you recover, you're a newcomer, or you're new in recovery. You still have a mental fog. And that's why I want to, and that's what I'm doing with my clients. They have different levels of entry, but for the people who just come from a detox or treatment center, we have to treat the feelings. Because I remember when I was released from Hazelden in 1999, I was sober, I was clean, I was determined, but the relapse was at the corner of the street, especially in France. When you cross the street, there is a bar. Because the feelings were so raw. I had been burying my feelings for years and years and years. My trauma under alcohol, drugs, sexual promiscuity, a lot of compulsive overeating. And the feelings popped up, and I couldn't deal with them. And so what I suggest to do to my with my clients is that if you don't want to relapse, we have to treat your feelings. And first, we have to identify them, because we're very bad at identifying our feelings. We don't like feelings. We're afraid of emotions. So what popped out was extreme anger, resentment, blaming everything else, when actually I had to understand, and I am at that point, that I'm not responsible for my disease. I'm responsible for my recovery. So I help them live in the here and now, talking about their feelings, and the main door to the feelings is, for me, when they accept, because it's a tailored treatment, to go through visualization, relaxation, breathing. And because the body talks better than our brain, especially when we're still in the fog of addiction. And then you can identify feelings in a safe place. You can relax, you can admit them, you can welcome them. And then once we know them, we can work on them. And we work also on the strength of the client, because alcoholics and addicts, they're not bad persons, but they have a lot of skill and talent. But, you know, some have lost their jobs, some have lost their families, some because of the disease. So there are multiple techniques. If the person is reluctant, resistant to relaxation, some men, and we can talk and we can identify and I give assignments. I'm not going to tell you what assignment, because some people want to escape. No, it's really not difficult, but it's a work. It's the conquest of our inner self. And that's, for me, the only quest that is valuable in life. You know, I've been running after money, glory, violence, and what I've found in recovery is that it's my little self, but it's myself, and I accept myself now. And helping others, it's my vocation now. you know.
That's really beautiful. The moment, when was the moment that you decided to be a recovery coach? So when you said like you explored your own story and tried to get more, yeah. So when was the final point where you decided to go this way and felt
I
comfortable with
I
it as
wanted
well?
to change my life the day I entered the treatment center. And you know, every almost every client and patient in inpatient or outpatient programs who really are willing to recover, they want to become an addiction counselor.
Mm.
But I could not, because at the time I was the correspondent at the White House for the French National Radio and TV, and the bureau chief for the United States, and I was working a lot. But one day I took a deep leap of faith, and I said, "It's no more for me. It's all about my ego, others' egos. I cannot recover like that. So if I want to put my sobriety first, so my life, because my life is at stake, I've got to change." And I decided to study addiction counseling and addiction disorders, to be more accurate. And from there, I interned at the Walter Reed Army Hospital Center with veterans, so I could relate PTSD a lot. And it was the beginning of the opiates epidemics, because it started a lot with the veterans. They were given opiates like candies, you know. And then it started from there. I've been an addiction counselor, and I was not very satisfied with the rules in hospitals, or sometimes no self-disclosure. And coaching is so much more flexible, and it's more expensive for the client, by the way. So I think, yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I love. And
That's really amazing. It's nice that you found the shift and found fulfillment in helping others with what you struggled before.
It's a journey, you know, it's not a destination.
And from my
It's
experience,
hard.
these are also the best counselors and coaches that really went through this shit on their own. And
You got it.
I think this is so much more valuable if you have a person that knows this stuff on their own. If compared to if you just know it from the university or something, then it's completely different, I guess.
You need the knowledge, you know. You need the knowledge too.
Is there a pattern you're recognizing in clients over and over again? So you already mentioned with the emotions that they're not aware of emotions. But is there another thing which you would say this is a major thing you see over and over in clients?
I think the patterns of the clients, the addicts, is the patterns of the disease. They have a lot of genetic background. Most of the time, it's a genetic disease worsened by trauma in the past, in childhood, and later in life. So we can talk about genetic disease and also self-medication. I studied especially co-occurring disorders. You have a diagnosis of addiction plus a diagnosis of mental health problems, like it can be bipolar, major depression, ADHD, PTSD, and so on and so forth. So that helps. The problem with the patterns is also that, and the disease, it's a progressive disease. Imagine that if you stop drinking like I did 20 years ago, let's say, a bit more, and if I resume now, the progression of the disease would have continued. It's not because I was stopped. It's an incurable disease. And if I drink now, not only wouldn't I have the pleasure I had in my old days, but I would resume and become immediately even more miserable than I was before. I could die. And that's another pattern of the disease. It's a fatal disease, and it's not great, pretty death, overdosing or living in your basement. And I'm just passing the details, but it's a terrible death. So we have to understand that it's a physiological disease. So the person is sick and cannot control, so he becomes controlling. He becomes angry. He becomes angry at himself, at the world. So that's a big pattern. The self-esteem is down the tube, or it's a complex of superiority that hides a problem of low self-esteem. We can cheat, we can lie, we can steal. A lot of addicts steals because it costs a lot. It's also very difficult to be understood, and so it's a disease of shame. It's a disease of shame, and especially for overeaters. But because you wear your disease on yourself. When you're big, you're big. But it's a disease of isolation, because if you had cancer, which is another disease, it's a diagnosis, people will take care of you, or at least be compassionate, but you have a disease of alcohol or addiction, you become miserable. People don't want to go around you because you're really not a happy person. Sometimes they are very violent. I loved street fighting in my 20s. I loved that. I was waiting for it. And I'm 5'5", and I was thin like that. But impulse, because I was very violent. I was looking for trouble. So the difficulty for the addict in recovery is to imagine that a calm, serene life would be not boring. Because we have been living in violence, adrenaline highs, and a romance life, self-romance, we imagine. But recovery is everything but boring. And it's just the door to a real life. Because that's pretty much the patterns of the alcoholics and addicts. What can I tell you about them, or us actually, that would qualify as a good candidate? Deny. Deny.
Yeah, okay. It's funny that you call them normies, the normal people. I'm not sure if they are normies, so I think
that's another debate
Yeah, so at least I know it from myself, and I know it from so many clients as well, that with at least the tendency in one way or another to have like an addictive behavior or addictive impulses, like whether it's overeating, whether it's sex, whether it's alcohol, or there's so many varieties of possible addictions or tendencies to have these impulses. The question is, and I think this is also the reason all of our listeners can really resonate with what you told about. And yeah, so isn't it like, it's just a question how you see it, isn't it like this, that we some to a certain extent that we all have like tendencies of addiction in us, or how you see this? And interesting would be to hear what you have like for your advice, how to cope with them, how to cope with these tendencies to overeat or whatever it is in our life.
Well, it's a long process, and I'm there to help, because the coach by himself is not enough. We have to build a recovery system, a support system, which could include, and it's a choice of the client, it can include a psychiatrist who knows addiction, behavioral and mood altering substance. Sometimes the legal system, because sometimes they're in trouble. Maybe the family, if they want to mend the relationships. The PO, the police, the probation officer, and so on and so forth. So the technique I use, or the methods, is tailored. If you have, it's not much the addiction that matters. It's what triggers it inside of you, and that's what we are doing and working on. And it can be a trauma, it can be feelings, it can be a lot of things. So I tailor the treatment and the treatment plan. So it's hard to explain what I can do for a compulsive overeater, or because even a compulsive overeater has a history, and she can be an anorectic, it can be an overeater, it can be a bulimic. It really depends.
But this is already a golden advice, because you're just telling you have to go one level deeper and look behind it, behind this behavior we have. This is, I think, the key to realize this. There's something behind it and some level deeper. So it's not about looking at the symptom, it's looking one level deeper, and this is brilliant.
Using the symptoms to go deeper.
Yeah.
But and also, for example, and that can apply to any addict and in any on any level of entry in his recovery. Addicts tend to live in a dummy past and pretty hard past. Try to reliving the past, or full of regrets, or in a projected future, which is gonna be grim if he continues to drink. So my job with any alcoholic and addict is to center them, to ground them in the present moment. It's scary to be in the present moment, because you don't. Some people have been raised in very violent families, and they have trauma. You don't know what's going to happen next. You're working on eggshell, and you don't want to face the present moment. And actually, that's all we have. That's all we have, and that's on that ground on which we can build sobriety and recovery. And so we don't regret the past. We live in the present moment. That doesn't mean we don't project ourselves in the future in terms of career, mending relationships, and so on. That's the coaching part. But starting to live in the present and accepting yourself in the present is so hard, but it's so freeing. It's so freeing. Because in the present moment, there's no problem.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think this is also something which all can relate to, and this is a brilliant advice or help for all of us, that if we manage to be more in the present, that this can help all
it doesn't come from me. It comes from spiritual practices and like Eckhart Tolle or Tara Brach, or to name the most famous. But everybody's talking about awareness. What does it mean, awareness? For example, for food addicts, and it takes time because we're compulsive, or for a gambler, I ask them to go slow, to slow down everything. Like you are on, these movies, you're on like this.
Slow motion.
And it gives you time to make space in your brain and to make a decision calmly. And so we have to do a lot of exercise before we're able to come back to the uh, to the table, the gambling table, if he can, or to face food, because awareness, what is it? It's, for example, taking time to chew, and they don't like. I hate chewing. Come on, I'm losing my time. I want more food. No,
Yeah.
but you know, when you recovered for from a lot of crap like this, it's the glory of it's a satisfaction, like you're free. You're totally free now. There's no excuse, and actually I also explain to my clients that they blame a lot their parents, but it's not what has happened or is happening right now that matters. It's our reactions that matter. And when we can change our reaction to the events, it changes everything. We're not dependent anymore. About codependence, I treat them too. We all more or less codependent.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say there are really people without addictive tendencies?
Excuse me?
Would you say there are people existing completely without addictive tendencies? Or is it like we have it all just in different variations?
It's a good question. I think we all have something, but the degree of seriousness makes all the difference. For me, a normie, because I'm an alcoholic in particular, is someone who leaves some beer or wine in his glass when he leaves the table. For me, it's just crazy. A normie has no depression, or just because it's an event or he loses someone. A normie for me is someone who can hide also his addiction or his problems. The thing is that you can have a mental health diagnosis and not acting on it in terms of compulsion of addiction, but you can have very violent reactions. I don't think they are really normies with a capital N. I hate to say that, but we're not much different. You know, we're unique as addicts and alcoholics. That's our credo. We're unique, our uniqueness, you know, because nobody understands us. And I think, yeah, there are no normies with a capital N. We all have a tendency to compensate on something with a behavior of mood altering substance because we don't feel good. But from the moment where you have the tools to feel good, almost whatever happens, or to sit quiet on uncomfortable feelings, because everybody has feelings. The thing is to learn how to sit on uncomfortable feelings, deal with them, talk to them sometimes, and then they will pass.
Yeah.
That's recovery.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Your question about normies, I should write something for your blog sometime. It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's really valuable what you told about sitting with feelings and accepting them. I think it's a very, very helpful advice for all of us.
Not reacting, but acting.
Yeah, and letting, maybe sometimes also letting just the feeling be and accepting it, and like you said, don't act on it. And yeah, I think this is really, really deep wisdom for our listeners. Thank you very
But we
much.
have to you know, the feelings, they have a life on their own, and the more we get attached to them, or the more we get identified to them, we give them more energy, we give them more power. So before being able to sit on uncomfortable feelings, like an uncomfortable chair, we have to detach from the emotional charge of them. And then negative feelings, disturbing feelings, uncomfortable feelings, they will happen all your life. But that's what makes the difference between someone who reacts immediately and badly and is afraid and doesn't want to talk about those feelings or doesn't want to recognize them and to deal with them, and a normie, someone who reacts sanely, you know. So it's a process.
Yeah.
You cannot,
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Laura. This is so much wisdom, and I'm pretty sure that the people they're watching this will get so much.
You get great questions.
Is there anything else you want to share? So whether it's like related to this topic or what can be helpful for people watching us, anything else what you want?
Well, maybe for the families or the closed ones, the loved ones, because it's a very difficult disease to live with when you're an addict. But when you're a child of an alcoholic like I was, or you're the spouse, or you're the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, grandmother, and the guy is impossible to handle. It's like soap. One day promises you that tomorrow he doesn't drink, he's calm for 2 days, and then he goes and he's arrested for a burglary. You cannot trust an addict. You cannot trust him or her as long as not is in recovery. So you can enable him, because we see a lot of codependency in couples with an alcoholic and maybe another alcoholic or not, two addicts or one normie and an addict, but there's a codependence there. And so the dynamic in the family changes with recovery, because in the past, let's say the spouse has been trying to handle the person in recovery, or to be very controlling, authoritative. That doesn't work. That doesn't work anymore. And when he's in recovery, the dynamic of the family has changed. And everybody, it's like, the seats. Everybody has to find the right seat, the right place. And some spouses are very jealous. They're not responsible for everything anymore. They cannot complain anymore, and they don't understand really the disease. So it's very hard for the family. The family has been very hurt. But again, the recovery, the recovered person or the recovering addict needs support, and he needs understanding. It's difficult for the family. Sometimes the relationships mend, sometimes they don't. But I love to include the family when it's time and when the client is ready for that.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect. This is really something. Yeah, so I think we all, whether our friends or family, we know someone who is like addictive, and this is really helpful to.
And we're very judgmental to them.
And also the fact that the things are coexist, that when it disappears, then there's something missing in the system and things changes. So it's interesting to address this as well. And
that's part of the job of a coach, a recovery coach, is to find things to do with your time and your feelings and your thoughts when you're in recovery.
Yeah.
Because there's another dynamic, and you think if you get bored, it's a big trigger for a relapse. So you have to find new occupations, new center of interests, and it's a revolution. But it's that or you die. It requires courage and trust in a higher power. If someone is atheist, I don't care. But we cannot do that by ourselves. We cannot. Believe me, I tried. My father tried, committed suicide, and I have so many friends who are dead now, and it was not pretty.
So the people should seek help immediately, as quick as possible, and yeah, it's
Sometimes you need to
good
reach a
point.
bottom because you don't accept that you are really, well, you know, I drink 6 beers a day. What's the big deal? I'm not an alcoholic.
Mm.
And but information helps, because when you inform the client about the disease, the nature of the disease, the consequences, its progression, you planted a seed in his brain, and he will come back if necessary and if when he's ready. And unfortunately, sometimes you're not ready before you reach a terrible rocky bottom, like me,
Yeah.
because you think you can make it by yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't want to change your life because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Definitely. Yeah.
But actually it's not.
That's beautiful.
Thank you,
Thank you
Ivan.
so much, Laura. It's so amazing. I
You're
think
welcome.
all people can really resonate with you. Thank you so much for sharing this so open. So it's still,
Thank you
I
for
think it's
having me.
one of the hardest things to do, to share such personal stuff on on a bigger scale. And this is I think we all can relate to it, and I'm pretty sure it's helpful for a lot of people. And
I hope.
so I'm really glad that you shared this. Please let our listeners know where they can find you. So where are you located, and what's your, maybe you can
I'm
give your,
located in Northern Virginia, close to Washington, but essentially I communicate with my clients through Zoom or, you know, online.
yeah, that's amazing.
When I can see them or meet them and their family, it's even better. I can travel if necessary, but you know, we tend to think that face to face is very good, and there's a biology. There is something that passes in face to face, but also it can be very it can be a problem for a patient, a client. I continue to say patient, and I'm sorry, I'm a recovery coach, not a therapist. So clients can be deterred from going to the coach because it's snowing, it's dark. You know, when you're in recovery, in early recovery, still drinking, you don't want to make that effort to park, to pay the ticket, and to wait, and to come back. So instead of taking 1 hour in the comfort of your room, you're spending 2 hours, and you're stressful and you're stressed. And I've been there. I went to therapist, and so I really I don't want to go, you know, but you have to. But yeah, but online is beautiful too.
Yeah.
I think we communicated pretty well
Yeah,
together.
perfect. It's like I'm sitting in your office, so it's for me it's not a difference. I work with clients always online, and it's like I'm sitting in your office, so I don't feel really a difference. Especially if people are so empathetic like you and easy to connect, then I think it's the best way to.
Yeah, you know, some therapists or psychoanalysts, they're like lay down, and they're taking their pen and they're chewing in for an hour, and they don't react. That's not for addicts, you know. That's for normies if they want to know themselves better. But someone who is not interactive, what's the use of it, you know?
Yeah.
That's how I passed from psychoanalysis to behavioral therapy, and then coaching, and I applied that, and it changes everything, because we have to change our behaviors and our thinking, instead of blaming others, because in the past, you know, it doesn't work for us. It drives us crazy and more. I was going drunk to my psychiatrist. It never told me to stop. Drawing high, and I was not hiding it from him.
Yeah.
So I still have drunk too much, or I'm high, or, you know, Xanax and alcohol, and, you know, and coffee. So I was, and oh, what happened in your childhood? What did your father did to you? So I spent dollars, thousands of dollars, dozens of thousands of dollars telling them about my life. They were not reacting. And when I came in the United States, they tell me you have to change your mind and your behaviors, and that's it. That was a relief. What a big relief. But it's up to me, you know. I have to do the job because I talk the talk, but the client has to walk the walk with me. I'm just a companion on his road.
Yeah, but it's beautiful to realize that it's not necessary to go back and through all this past childhood and trauma, and that there are other ways to.
It's a dangerous game because
change.
the neural pathways are deepened and deepened, and you don't need that.
What's the name of your domain? What's your website?
It's www.cara.llc.
Cara is C, huh?
Yeah, LLC. It stands for Custom Addiction Recovery Anonymous, LLC. So cara.com.
Awesome.
And you can call me and we can text.
Perfect. That's
202-491-8837.
Nice. Thank you very much for being here, for taking your time for us. It's really beautiful.
Same here.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, and I wish you a beautiful day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I really hope you enjoyed this interview. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel, and please give me also a comment how it resonates with you. If you have questions around addictions, I'm happy to answer them. See you in my next videos. Thank you. Bye-bye.